please welcome the incredible person, the guy that I get to wake up to every morning. And I'm so honored to reintroduce you for the third time on my podcast. The only male that's ever been here, my husband, Dan Martell.
Hey, babes. What's up, everybody? If you don't know, I call her
L's
Peanut.
Martell.
Yeah, double L, Martell.com. Well, it's an honor. Honestly, I know how incredible this podcast is and the audience you've put together. And I'm committed to giving you 110%, but more importantly, everybody listening, my best, the behind the scenes, no filters. Let's do it.
Yeah. And you are the big reason why this actually started, because I remember talking about doing this podcast in 2020. And you're like, what's the date? Put it on your calendar. And I was like, fine. And I arbitrarily just looked at the calendar and chose April 27th, 2020, because I think it was 5 weeks out from when you were like interrogating me. And I did it. And I didn't know what I was doing. And I asked you to be a guest on my show. And you said, not till you get 100 episodes. And I was like, screw you, but fair enough. How about you're my 100th guest? And then you were my 100th guest. And the reason why you're coming back on this time is because you're my 200th guest.
Well, that's super cool. Mm-hmm. And I know you had me on for the book. Yep. Buy Back Your Time, Wall Street Journal bestselling book. If anybody's interested, but
I talk about your book a lot on this show. They know.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
good.
They know.
Well,
they know.
I mean, as you know, I'm proud of it, but I think it'll help a lot of folks, especially your audience, that are trying to build something meaningful but get stuck.
Yeah, and the book too, I've actually put a note, actually folded one of the pages, because closer to the back, I'll go find what page it is. He mentions me. It's funny. I didn't realize it until I read the book. And I will say this, obviously this is biased, but I remember when I started reading your book, I was laying next to you in bed and I turned to you. I was like, holy crap, Dan, this is actually good. He's like, I know, right? I think you were also surprised. Yeah. Even though you wrote the darn thing. Buy Back Your Time, though, the way that I wrote or read the book and actually got the most benefit from it was reading a chapter, executing on everything you taught me in that chapter, then go to the next chapter. I wouldn't move on until that work was done. And so it took me a while to get to the end, but it all made sense. And here's the thing is everything in that book I already knew, because I've overheard you talking about it, or you've coached me on it or something. However, it was never positioned in the sequence as you had it in the book. So it made more sense to me.
Yeah.
And that's why I said it was so good. You were shocked that I was shocked. We were all just shocked together, and it was a beautiful celebration. But anyways, congratulations on becoming Wall Street Journal bestseller. You definitely deserved it. I know how hard you worked on that thing. Even to this day, what are we? 5 months out from book pub? What is it? Something like that?
Yeah, January 17th. No, a little longer, 7 months.
Okay. And you are still doing interviews and you're still promoting that thing.
Every day. I just got off another podcast or PR thing or speaking. I mean, it's a message, babes, that I'll probably do for honestly the rest of my life. It's just like, as you know, living with me, this is just kind of like a through line for how I think of like life. So I think it's one of those, I wrote a book that I wanted to be a perennial seller and always be relevant. And if it was the only book I ever wrote, I'd be happy with it. But luckily, I definitely have multiple books inside of me, and I'm excited to start thinking of working on the next one. But yeah, I'm here for you. Let's not make it about me. Let's make it about how we can support your audience.
So this episode is about us.
Yeah.
I'm hoping we can get to 3 core themes in this. And they don't necessarily all make sense, but these are like things that are burning inside of me that I want to talk about. The first one is, now that you've launched this book, you don't coach just SaaS companies anymore. Now you've opened up, you're coaching mostly businesses, and we'll talk about that. But I also want to get your perspective now on the difference between men and women in coaching. And then the second hot topic, which is a huge hot topic, is our house operations. And the last one is parenting and marriage. So maybe they all kind of go together. But first of all, what is it that you do and who do you do it for?
Yeah. So, I mean, what do I do today? I would call myself as a media person, which is kind of a weird thing considering I've always been an entrepreneur my whole life and I have multiple businesses. But I produce content, and we just signed a lease on a new studio space, which I haven't shown you yet, but I told you about. And we're going to be building out a bunch of different sets. We're going to be hiring editors, and it's going to be a big, meaningful thing. But so yeah, I have a big audience online. I'm now an author, best-selling author, which is kind of a crazy idea. YouTuber, got my 100,000 silver plaque behind there, subscribers. But what I do is I help entrepreneurs build companies they don't grow to hate. And that's like the core of what I do. I, for 10 years, have done it in the software space. Well, my whole career in the software space. But since the book's come out in the last, I think 3-4 months ago, I launched a new program to work with entrepreneurs. Half of them, if not more, are women, which I think is awesome. I've always loved working with female entrepreneurs as an investor, advisor, and now I get to coach them. So I coach entrepreneurs how to monetize themselves, how to build their systems, how to lead teams properly, how to get themselves out of their own way, and push them way beyond anything they thought was possible. And that's like my happy place. And you've, unfortunately, Renee, you've been on the receiving end of that. It's just what I do. But yeah, I like to tell people about the person I see inside of them and their potential, and then support them on that path if they feel called to go there.
The fortunate side of this is that, I don't know, ladies, when you go to your man or your partner to complain about something or to vent your frustration, and all they want to do is fix it. And 98% of the time, you just want them to listen. And when I was growing my businesses over the years, of course, I had the luxury of having Dan by my side. But at the same time, I'm like, wife hat, don't try to fix this.
Oh, yeah. Or I'm like, okay, babes, do you want me to answer your question, or do you want me to just listen? I'm happy to do both. I just need a little guidance because I'm a little unclear. And it's funny because like most of the time you're like, just listen. You give me that look. But a few times you're like, no, I want you to coach me. I want your advice. And those always take me back. But because that's my love language in many ways. So yeah, it's just it's what I do. It's how I show up for my friends. It's the way I create the most value for people that I care about.
Totally.
Help.
So speaking about coaching, especially women, now that you've kind of jumped to, I don't want to say jumped ship, but because with SaaS Academy, it used to be just technology companies, and now it's not. And you coach a lot of women now, and you've had enough experience in coaching both men and women. What do you see as one of the biggest things that women do that men don't have the tendency of doing?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. I mean, in the software space, I'd say like 5 to 10% are women. So I have a lot of experience over the last while coaching female CEOs of software companies, which is amazing. And then now with my new coaching program, more than half being women, I've gotten a lot more reps at it. And really kind of because it's an earlier stage program where a lot of the other ones are further on in their, the like multiple 7 figures is earlier. A lot of the clients I coach in the software space are kind of 7 figures and beyond. There's a lot. Now, this is generalities, right? And I can speak in generalities. I can speak in my judgment, but there's always exceptions to the rule. So I'm just going to throw kind of some of the high level things that I've seen that's different. The big one is men typically have way more confidence. Out of 100 men, they're seeking to be successful. When I ask them to paint me a picture of their future and their dreams and their goals, for example, a 17-year-old kid this morning, he's like, I want to do 100 million by the time I'm 30. So most women don't say stuff like that to me. Not that they don't, some do, but all things being equal, usually that's a big difference, is that the confidence in their own skills, which I think is undervalued because their skills are so capable. Like women have this almost this Canadian-esque way to be humble to a fault, right? Where they don't value their abilities. And I kind of love that, because my favorite thing to do is to like really shine the light on their power and their progress, and try to hold them up to, higher opportunities of purpose and whatnot. So that would be one thing. The other one is the fear of letting go in certain aspects. It's interesting because I think if an entrepreneur figures out how to grow and let go of like the basic stuff, like your calendar and your email, and I would say that's kind of like low level beginning stages. I've seen some of them like grow multiple 7-figure companies, and then, but in their personal life, this is the part, Renee, and you could probably tell me why, but even though they grow like a multi-million-dollar business and they know how to delegate at that level, in their home life, they have a hard time doing this. And I remember one time I was working with a client, and again, she had, a $6-7 million a year company and had a whole finance team and a whole, executive assistant, all these things, but yet still demanded and required her to manage paying all the bills inside their home. And it was fascinating because they brought that up. They're like, I'm really good in other areas of my life, but other places I feel super stuck. And when I, kind of double clicked on things and asked the why and the why and the why, it was, the feedback I got from this woman was, I guess I'm just worried that if somebody doesn't get paid that, like, my kid's tuition at school or our house manager or cleaning person or whatever, that they're just going to judge me as an individual and think to themselves, like, this person can't even manage their own house. And that was more scary and painful than the business side, because, in business, you don't get an invoice paid on time or something gets lost. It's like, I got a team, it's not my fault. But yeah, that was an interesting thing. And I know, Renee, I think we've talked about this, just like the fear that most women have around the judgment of their mother or their neighbors or their friend group, especially if they have more success or more affluent, like they don't want to alienate themselves as much. Whereas a man, it's almost like a status thing, because I remember a long time, I remember reading this thing where like men measure themselves like this, up and down, like, where, after I said this, where do you see me on the hierarchy? Right. And women measure themselves, this way, which is for, forward, closeness, essentially proximity. And essentially every time they talk, they're essentially saying, now that I've shared this, how close do you feel to me? And I think that's probably a big part of it, of where men almost take pride in letting things go, or like teams and success and all this stuff. Whereas women are worried about, like, if I share this, then maybe you won't feel as connected, or that I can't relate to you, or you won't relate to my situation as much. I don't know what it is, but it's fascinating. So that's a big part of it.
From many of the conversations I have, there's this societal pressure, obviously, for women to do it all, but the enoughness comes in. Because if I ask you, do you think you're a great father? You say
I'm the
yes.
best father.
Yeah. And then if you ask me the same thing, am I a good mother? And I don't think I am, because my definition of a good mother is based on how I was raised, but also the expectations of society. So a good mother makes their kids a healthy breakfast, make sure they have their sunblock on, their water bottle packed, they have their hats, they have everything they need for the day. And if they forget something, it's my fault. Now all of a sudden the reflection looks bad on me. I look like I've lost control or I'm unorganized. And so I don't want people to think that, because I want people to know, like, and trust me. And so my kids need to go to camp with everything they need, because if they've forgotten something, it's not a matter of that was their responsibility, because you would say, well, if you forgot your hat, that's your fault, Max. But in my mind, it's my mistake. I didn't oversee it. And I see this with a lot of women, that they feel this pressure to do it all. And we talk about this a lot, and there's inklings of people giving up that sense of responsibility. And for a lot of women, that's also a feeling of losing control. And the thought of, if I'm not in control of everything that's happening in my household, that I'm losing control. So if I'm not controlling paying the bills, or if I'm not controlling the groceries, then am I really in control?
It's fascinating. I guess it comes down to, like, why do you, again, I don't fear as much, I guess, the opinion of other people around my performance.
Hmm.
Like I
I think
don't
that's a
seek that
thing too.
validation. Yeah. Like if a school teacher in Max's class goes, or Max's dad's an idiot because he forgot to send the money for the thingamajig, or he didn't pick him up on time, or honestly anything, I just personally don't I
Yeah.
don't feel the need to have that validation or that fear, I guess.
Yep.
Cause I seek it in other places, and not to say it's right or wrong. I'm just saying it's just, my validation comes from other entrepreneurs or other peers that see my performance,
Mm.
or my results, not necessarily other places.
Yeah, and then this reflects in the business world too.
Yeah,
Like
no, that's, I
the
think
not
I know where it comes from. I don't know how to solve it. Luckily, I'm aware about it because I've read a lot about. I mean, it sounds crazy, but you and I have both read a bunch of books about relationships and
Mhm.
different constructs and internal family systems, and just the spiritual side of things and all of it. But so, like, as a coach, I love it because I understand where they're coming from, and then based on what they're feeling, I can kind of hopefully sell them on a different point of view. That's kind of what I tell myself. I'm just a
So
professional POV dealer.
with these women that you're coaching now,
Mm-hmm.
they've obviously taken a leap to work with you because they
Yeah.
know you. And I know some of these women personally, they're my friends, and they're obviously they were very scared to be a part of this program because they just know how you show up. Don't sugarcoat anything. I don't care if you're a man or a woman. I'm going to talk to you the way that I coach people. Um, with that, do you see a lot of these women in your program? Are they the primary breadwinners?
I've never thought of it that way. I'd have to scan some of my. What's funny is I don't even know.
Hmm.
Like that's actually the truth, because like I coach your coach, and I don't know if she's a
Yeah.
primary breadwinner. I mean, obviously, I know Kira. She's a client. She manages her own financials. I'm assuming. I mean, I know she had a husband before, but I'm assuming she provides for herself in the most meaningful way.
Do you think? Because here's what I'm getting at: is we talk about forcing functions. When you're the primary breadwinner, there is an insatiable need to keep growing and to be successful because you need to keep the roof over your head. And I'm generalizing, so I could be wrong in all this too. Is that a lot of the women that I've coached or I see in the industry that are not primary breadwinners, that are entrepreneurs, have less of a forcing function for growth because their income isn't as, I don't want to say isn't as important, but in terms of generating the revenue and growing the business, maybe it's not the most important thing. And
You
so
know
when you
what's
look at,
funny? This is literally funny. As I scan like a dozen, 20 of the clients that I coach, I think all of them, they're either in a relationship, and I know their business is a significant part of their living. Like, you know what I mean? It's not like a bonus, it's like needed to live.
yeah.
And the other half are freelancers, maybe not in a relationship, and they take care of themselves. So yeah, I guess in that context of, is their business required to be, in Maslow's hierarchy
Mhm.
of like basic needs and stuff, then the answer is yes, which from a
Mm.
marketing point of view, I kind of love, because now I know more about my avatar, right?
Mhm.
I coach female entrepreneurs that are the primary breadwinners in their family. That's a lot more specific than broad. And it's probably the ones I do the best with because they show up and they're leaning in, right?
'Cause
Like,
they're hungry.
yeah, and I don't, and like, what's fun is, I think, unless and you've been around me enough, Renee, so you've seen me kind of, I have different styles. Like I've been on coaching calls where somebody, like two people ask me the exact same question, and depending on the individual, I might lean in and be incredibly direct with somebody, and the other one I might be a little bit more empathetic and exploratory in my response. And I just honestly, I just use my heart before I do every one of my coaching calls. I do a little prayer and say, God, use me to do the best work I can to support these people. And I'm very intuitive in regards to how I respond. But I definitely, I mean, nobody's going to accuse me of not being direct, but same time, some people I don't think need that. And hopefully I can read it. And sometimes, and yeah, I just have
I
different
think
tools.
my perspective is really comes down to that forcing function. it's like my new car, for instance. It is something that I pay for personally, and I'm proud of it. At the same time, it's like I need to make the money to pay for the car, and it's not a cheap car. Or like hiring my coach. She's she's expensive. But at the same time, cost aside, it's like I need this help, but still now there's this forcing function in my business. Like I got to show up, I got to close more deals because I'm paying for these things. I'm not no one else is paying for these things. So I think the whole notion of like if you're the primary breadwinner or if your income is extremely important to the nature of your lifestyle, then you'll probably be more up to growing your business as opposed
Yeah.
to being a lifestyle company.
Yeah, I mean but that's probably true across individuals in general, right? Like people that are independently wealthy, it's the whole thing where if people don't pay, they don't pay attention, right?
That's
You know,
true.
and you even use the language
Mhm.
like she's expensive. I would never say that. You know, I wouldn't. I would say she's an investment. She's a significant investment. Not to coach you live on the air, but
You just did.
I do that from time to time. I'm like, should I not? But
Oh, no, and
you know,
I was even saying that. I'm like, I know he's gonna call me out on this.
ha,
People understand those words, and that's why I use the words expensive in the sense that usually things that are expensive have value, really important value. So, anyways, um, let's move beyond this though, because
because you knew I was gonna I was gonna come back. But no, it's all good. I love everything you say, and especially when
yeah.
we talk about it late at night.
Yeah, and that, it just got me thinking about that too, just the difference between men and women in coaching. Um, so let's see. You texted me some questions this morning, which I loved, and some ideas of what we can talk about. One thing people ask us a lot about is our house operations because,
Mm.
gosh, we had two babies in the same year as starting businesses. Our boys are 11 months apart,
And built
and
2 houses
built
from
two houses.
scratch.
There was a lot of stuff happening, and with that, we all survived.
Yeah, it was a
Um,
blur.
and one of the biggest things that really came out of all that too was in the process of delegation. And it started small, but now it's to the point where we have an incredible house manager. Her name's Betty. She's even in Dan's book. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole lot to unpack. I think the first
Mhm.
principle behind all of it is this. I think it's easy to see in our business life how to buy back our time, right? It's like get an executive assistant, hire employees, you know, contractors, whatever it is. Like look at our calendar, figure it out. But most people just stop there. And what I discovered in that process of, you know, both of us starting companies and, having, two boys in the same fiscal year and building these two houses, one initially kind of like a summer home, then our kind of like bigger dream home kind of thing. And then it just made me realize like some of the biggest time opportunities is in our personal lives. So what we've done is we've just gotten really good at applying that process to our home. So at a high level, the way I kind of resolve it in my head is I've got kind of two key people, my executive assistant who managed my business life and my house manager who manages my personal life. And when I say personal life, I literally mean the CEO of my life. Okay. All things personal, house, real estate, vehicles, in home, out of home, maintenance, schedule, credit cards, passports. I mean, I think, Renee, if people understood the breadth of the responsibilities that our house manager, Betty, is responsible for, it would be really impressive. I mean, everything from writing SOPs on the new sauna or the cold plunge we've gotten, or, being responsible to literally go in and buy me a new supercar, right? Like I was not involved in that process. And when the sales guy would message me, ask me about stuff, I kept saying, if you don't talk to Betty, she's going to kick your ass because Betty's responsible for it. So
That's
the
also
delivery,
so unheard of. I mean, you think about a person buying a supercar, they want to be a part of the entire process.
I mean, I guess people do if they don't value their time. I was
Like if you
involved. I
enjoy
call it the
it.
10-80-10, right? I was involved in the 10% that mattered, which is choosing what car I wanted to and test driving it. once I made that decision, me being involved in any other aspect of it was not required.
Yeah. That makes sense.
So yeah. And then,
Paperwork.
I mean, paperwork, paint protection, insurance, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah. I mean, she's got perfect information on all that stuff because I've given her that. And it's again, it's a process, right? Like, Renee, how many times have we gone through it where, you know, the garage door sticks or something and you're like, oh, let's fix it this way. And I'm like, no, Betty's going to deal with it. And you're like, no, we can fix it easily. And I know we could, but at the same time, I'm not teaching her how to fish, right? So there's just like a lot of stuff like that, even just like with the house stuff, the groceries, it's so funny. It's all the little things. It's the mail. I mean, because of the nature of my work, I get a lot of mail from people I don't know, from clients, from whatever. And it's a process that would take me probably 2 to 3. I mean, think about all these piles of things that show up that need to be like, someone needs to be donated to charity. Cause like, I don't need another sweater with some person's logo on it, or, you know, this cool skateboard I just got.
Don't send Dan sweaters with somebody's logo on it.
No,
but I
I'm not
get
going to
this.
wear it.
So
yeah,
from my perspective, how this started was, I think I was like, we need a cleaning lady. And she came for 2 hours once every 2 weeks.
No, it was a cleaning, but remember before that, it was a cleaning lady and the chef. Remember? Because we hired somebody
oh my
to
gosh,
do meal
we hired
prep.
the chef, and because it was before real like food prep meal services were available.
Oh yeah, this was like almost 10 years ago.
Yeah. So the chef was, I mean, we were doing what we can with what we had. Even the chef was trying his hardest. And he would put these like almost Michelin star type meals together. So you have to understand these were complicated recipes that we still had to put together at home. Didn't work out. Long story short is there was a lot of convincing from Dan to me to get me on board because I felt guilty. I was raised in a household where the woman does this stuff, or even like my dad was 50-50 with a lot of the stuff. He mowed the lawn, watered the lawn, took out the trash, cooked the meals, cleaned up. Like he was very.
Let's pause for a second. Renee, in the time we've been together, how many times have you seen me do anything that you just mentioned?
Not at all.
0.
Okay,
I've never
I know
done any of it.
exactly. Yeah. So most people say a woman will marry their father. I did not do that. Quite the opposite.
Or maybe it was a bait and switch.
I
would love to take care of the house for you, babes.
So anyway, that and then the women that I talked to, they asked me these questions about a house manager, and even to this day, like there's some things I still find hard to let go of because I don't feel like I deserve to be waited on. And in my mind, I'm like, oh, that's my responsibility. Why would somebody else empty my suitcase after going away on a trip? Meanwhile, Dan's like, don't touch my suitcase. Betty will get it. And I'm like, ew, Betty has to go through your dirty clothes. And like, oh, but yeah. And she does it. And so for me, it was really, really tough. And even now I'll catch myself emptying the dishwasher and I'm like, I know Betty can just get this in the morning. I just feel like I deserve it more when I participate on some level. But there's probably people listening that are like, how do I do this? And how do you delegate this stuff? So we started with like small things. What are the first things that we had Betty do?
Well, even before Betty, our other house managers, I think the first place to start is cleaning. So it's kind of like flying business. I'm not going to get into that. Actually, I'll stop myself. Most people in their house should have somebody help do deep cleans once or twice a week, right? Even once a week. That's like basic. If you don't feel comfortable with that, you need to talk to your therapist because there's something going on that's probably not healthy and definitely a blocker from being able to leverage more support, which it's required. Like, I mean, the big thing is you can't build a meaningful life if you're doing everything. In business, I say you can't build $1 million company off $10 tasks, right? Mm-hmm. Same thing at the home. If you want to create the space for you to have a thriving business and be a world-class mom and be a great community leader and go to the gym and go to your church or CrossFit or whatever it is, like you just can't do it all. There's not enough hours in the day. You'll stress yourself out. You'll drain yourself. You'll burn yourself out. So
the three things for me that were, I wouldn't say the easiest things to just delegate was cleaning, laundry, groceries.
Perfect. And that was, I think, the first thing that I got you on board to do. And what I love about it's the gateway drug, right? It's like, as soon as you experience, went to my office in the morning, everything was dirty, came out of my office, everything's clean, and the sheets are, I know how much you love your clean sheets,
Yeah.
Peanut. And just like getting into bed, and you weren't involved in that, and it just happened magically. Dan Sullivan calls it the 4 seasons living, right? Like where you live in your home as if you were staying at the 4 seasons, right? Where you can make a call and get room service. You can have your clothes, dry cleaned, or you can call your car to get, whatever. Like, I think that's the context or the headspace that I think of it through. But most people sometimes stop at that. And like, it's all these little things like, buying furniture and having to coordinate picking it up, or running errands, or maintenance. This morning the water wasn't working. It turned out to only last about 10 minutes, but it didn't. And like, I didn't skip a beat. I took a video, posted it in our Voxer channel, and moved on with my day. Right. Like that, it's literally gotten to the place where even Betty has a team, right? She has her team of people. I don't know who they are, but they show up at the house all the time. They do stuff. She's got like, and she coordinates it all. I mean, she's an amateur bike mechanic. She's, well,
even like, so people are probably thinking, you need to buy new furniture. How can she make the decision? Here's how we do it. It's called the 1-3-1 principle, right? 1 problem, 3 options, 1 solution. So we say we needed to get new patio furniture. Dan's like, hey, Betty, can you help us get new patio furniture? Old me would have been like, yeah, and start searching. And I kind of poked around and I was like, I don't want to do this. So she found 3 options, which she knew that we would probably like. And she showed us what it would cost, how long it would take to get here, and all this stuff. And we would choose from one of those 3. We worked on it and problem solved.
Yeah. I mean, 1-3-1 is, again, we just apply it's in my book in case you haven't checked out in our transformational leadership chapter. But the whole idea is, I think, empowering people to make decisions. Like, for example, Betty has $1,000 or less decision capability. Like if she sees a problem and it costs less than $1,000 to solve it, she can just spend the money. Now, the rule is she has to tell me afterwards so I can give her some feedback if there's any required. But other than that, like, she's never slowing down to get my feedback. Same rule in the business, right? For frontline workers is $50. We call it the 50 to fix it, or 500 to fix it, or 5,000 to fix it, depending on what level of the organization people are in. But it's just, how do you allow people to support you, to solve problems, to move things forward, to create space, so that you can just show up? I literally just want to do 2 things. You've heard me say this, Renee, so many times. I just want to show up and do things that leverage my unique ability, right, in my work, right? Like my creative, my zone of genius, whatever you want to call it, and or spend time with people I love, doing things I enjoy. And whether, Renee, I think you find that annoying sometimes, or not.
Yeah, I do.
But those are literally the 2 things I want to do in my life. And the reason why I focus on being really good at making money, and then getting really good at coordinating cool activities with my friends, is because like that's what I'm striving for. And that's kind of how I live my life. So, Betty manages all the Airbnb stuff, all the vacation stuff, all the travel stuff. She travels with us. She helps us with the dog. She picked our dog, for frick's sakes. Like, I mean,
she did pick our dog.
We're like, hey, Betty, like, you go meet the litter and take some videos and find the one you think is the best. And, as soon as she showed us, we were like, 100% that's our dog, right?
Yeah. And I know this is so uncommon. Like, I know high performance.
That's the whole point.
Version of this.
Yeah. But I just want to say this, Peter. I share all these things, and I know people are like, wow, that's so crazy. I want to inspire people to, like, I'd rather us operate at like a 10 and everybody else be at like a 2 when it comes to delegating at their home, and meet at a 6, right? Yeah. So like, I share these things on purpose to tell you how crazy it can get, how cool crazy, to hopefully get you to do something. Because most people listen to this.
And when you do start doing this, by the way, and I'm saying you as in the listeners, because we talk about this enough on our show, but there's part of it too where you're going to be faced with resistance. It could be family or friends being, oh, like, must be lucky, or how nice of you. And I still get this today from family and from friends. And I say, we're very lucky, we're privileged to be able to have this, but also know that I wouldn't be able to go out for dinner with you tonight if I didn't have this, or I wouldn't be able to do X, Y, and Z. The reality is most people want it, and they just don't allow themselves to even have a small piece of it because they're worried about what other people are going to think, mostly women, even if they can't afford it. Most people can. Most people can't afford it. They just don't do it.
Some aspect of it for sure.
Yeah. So this allows us to is have incredible seasons in our marriage, because not only do we have this help here with Betty, we've also inspired other friends to get similar help. That's amazing.
Oh yeah.
And
Now the house managers coordinate with each other.
yeah. And they just know.
Yeah. They don't even ask any of us. They're just like, literally, I think Betty went and picked something up for Nick's house manager because it was something we were both buying.
Totally. But it's about community, and we support these people as much as they support us. But let's tap really quickly into like the parenting marriage side of things. Because while we live such a unique life, I know we do. And there's parts of it that's really hard. And like when it comes to being a partner with a high performer, there is pressure to keep up. There's pressure to climb these gigantic mountains with you. And some days I can't, some days I don't want to. And there's just so much pressure. And so I know Philip McKernan is somebody that we worked with in the past about this, and he described it really well, how we all have our own mountains to conquer. And in a partnership, we want the person to come with us. So we keep pulling them up the mountain, like, come join me and do this, when they may not be ready physically, emotionally, mentally. The reality is they have to climb their own mountain at their own pace. And we go through like good seasons in marriage and not great seasons in marriages. And I'm learning that it is all a part of the process, because it lays a bigger foundation. What are some of the things, the practices that we've done in the last few years that has really helped us in our marriage?
Yeah. I mean, that's the question.
That is the question.
Well, I'll say a lot of stuff. The things that I'm going to say, the most uncommon things. Again, I'd rather tell you stuff that most people don't know than things that you can just figure out if you watch us. One, we hire coaches. Okay. So we've had coaches, as you mentioned, Philip McKernan. We've invested in our relationship to be better for ourselves, for our kids, for our family, right? Like we have a parent coach. We have our family coach. We have our therapist. I have an unlimited budget for investing in things that are important to me, which is obviously, our individual health, like Renee's health, my health. That's number one, because if we're not healthy, then nothing else matters. And then second to that, our family, and then third to that is the business stuff and all that other. So I would say hiring coaches. I mean, we go to at least one seminar every year. As a couple, we invest in our relationship that way. So that's abnormal. I think most people don't, intentionally.
And we're talking like Tony Robbins level date with
Destiny. We're talking Joe Dispenza. We're talking like spiritual stuff. We're talking like it's major investments to do that. And so those are abnormal. I think the other stuff is, our quarterly retreats. So we in our calendar, those are the big rocks. We plan them. We got one coming up in September. I'm really looking forward to in Colorado. But I mean, again, people listen to this and they go like, oh, I don't even have enough money to hire a cleaning lady. It's like, you don't have to go away for a retreat. You can go away. You can go on a 6-hour hike on flat ground in the woods with your partner and just have a conversation for 6 hours, just have somebody watch the kids. And that would be better than what people are doing today. So it's not really about how extravagant the thing is. It's just more that there's intentionality around creating the space for you and your partner to get on the same page, right? So we have our agenda when we do that. We review our personal goals, our kind of like our vision boards and all that stuff, and really just try to over communicate what's important to each of us. The weekly meeting, our family meeting we do every Wednesday for lunch, which is coming up, is like another way for us to get on the same page and discuss things that have been left unsaid. Review our weekends, which is always a fun topic of conversation. Renee would rather do nothing.
He's saying that passive aggressively because we have different standards of what a great weekend is, also depending on where we've just been. So
yeah, and I mean that's part of the rhythm. I think I put that in my notes to you about things I think people would find fascinating. But just like understanding the rhythm of your partner and trying to figure out how to make it all work. Now, I get I'm abnormal in my desire to squeeze as much life out of every day, and my capacity. I have a very abnormal capacity for experiences and activities and people. So yeah, the weekends are always fun. Trying to teach you how to think about the financial infrastructure we've built out. Luckily, we have a great team that manages a lot of that. So, if anything happened to me, Renee would be in a great spot with the kids. And
Well, let's
I
just
just,
double click on that really quickly too. The importance of, and what most people fail to do, because it wasn't for you, I wouldn't even thought of this as an option. Even for our businesses, how we both, as of not that long ago, have access to everything legally in each other's business if for whatever reason something happens.
yeah, I
Right?
mean, we merged all of our bank accounts so that it's
And
easier.
accounting and everything.
Yeah,
And
yeah. Yeah, I
that
guess
wasn't
that,
easy. That was messy. But now it's like I knew the process was going to be so beautiful once we did it. But
well, and this is the
even
whole thing about the complexity ceilings, right? Like people will never surpass their ability to deal with complexity, right? Like that's just how it is. Having
yeah.
having no house manager, having a house manager are completely two different levels of complexity in the setting up of, but yet it's like creating an SOP for your business, standard operating procedure. It's like it takes work to do it, but once you have it done, it pays off in dividends, right?
Oh,
So
poof.
yeah, consolidating all of our various bank accounts and banks. I mean, there were several banks involved into one platform, one bank, and then creating the financial team to manage it all on our behalf, and even centralizing that so that the reporting and the structure, I mean, yeah. It's just kind of like paying off what I call organizational debt, right? Like there's sharpening the saw in our personal lives, right? Which could be like our preloaded year. Like sitting down and designing that, getting all the big rocks in, trying to be a little proactive in our year and saying like what events do you want to do this year? What,
Yeah.
things you need to get done? What are your girls' trips? What are your, et cetera, and putting those in to make sure there's no conflicts and that those are prioritized accordingly. That's just dealing with I don't know. To me, I've always thought proactively like that, and I just think it just requires a little bit more planning. But that's me. I'm a planner.
It's the thing. It's just like you said, creating an SOP. There's always so much more work that goes into it up front, but it saves you so much in the end.
Oh
Like
man, the
we
amount of
have it
times
for
I've
our
checked
house.
like our home SOP, I probably use it every week, for sure every week, sometimes once a day. And like our consolidated passwords, right? Like all
Yeah.
in one password. I mean, I've been in the backyard and I'm like trying to put something away and there's a door with a code on it. And I know that if I just go search
Yeah.
in the in our one password, it's there, which is awesome, right? Like it's just taking the time to build the system, like even in the home. And I don't know if you know about this one, Renee, but in our pantry, there's a spot next to the garbage can that if I put anything there, it gets replenished. So it's kind of like a simple reordering system that Betty and I designed. So that if I'm like 10% of my creatine or protein or whatever, I just drop the bag on the floor and she sees it, she reorders it and puts it back in the cupboard and then swaps it out when it comes in. So like that takes a little bit of thinking and effort, but once you design it, it's like, it's going to pay dividends, maybe 300 times this year, right? Of things
Yeah.
I want to reorder, like my Zevias or my NA beer or whatever it is.
Devious. Ugh, so
Gum.
many devious come. It's true. It's all about process and all of this to get our time back, to be able to spend with each other, with our family and friends and loved ones, to do the things that we love to do. Like you love to go wake surfing in
I
the
surf every
mornings.
day
Or
almost. Yeah.
whenever he can find a driver, Dan will be on the water. Just so if you have a boat license
Oh
and
my
you're in the
gosh. Today,
Okanagan.
Renee, the reason why, I don't know, you saw me, I was driving back the opposite direction. I was driving around calling people trying to find a driver because I don't like to go with a lot of people. And then if something happens, then I need to scramble, and last minute
You
drivers on
need
weekdays stuff.
to get some sort of 19-year-old kid
I
in the
may be at that level.
summertime.
I may be at that level where I'm going to have to buy back my
Hire
drivers. Yeah. Just hire a driver.
and because if Dan had his way, he'd be out there once a day, every day, at least twice a day, maybe.
Maybe twice.
I don't mind going out, but just not as much as him. So, and then marriage stuff is the way that if you look at it from a 30,000-foot view, parenting, marriage, it's all the business philosophies that have helped us in our business as leaders, as partners, become better with each
Yeah.
other and
If
as
people
parents.
haven't read the book Traction by Gino Wickman, like just apply traction to your family life and it'll get you 70% of the way there.
Yes, and then different philosophies on parenting too. I know you and I. It's you can never be perfect. We show up and we have our opinions on how to do things based on how we were raised, new information, advice from somebody else. And you and I aren't on the same page a lot. And we realize that because when it comes to parenting, Dan's default is our kids are at an age where they can do most things themselves. And it's true. I know they can. They're very, very capable humans. I'm also at a position where I think I'm a good mother if I do it for them. I know they're capable. And so Dan will come at me saying, well, now they're just going to get in this habit of expecting you to do it. And they're not going to learn how to do it. And I'm like, shut up. You're right. I know you're right. But I also want to feel like a good mother.
Can we clip that out and I can set that up as your ringtone when you call me?
Shut up.
I know you're right.
But even little things like, here's one example. We had to evacuate a week and a half ago, almost 2 weeks ago now. And this is the second time we've had the boys pack their suitcase. They know how to do it. And we just said, guys, grab clothes for a week and all the stuff you can and put into a suitcase. Boom, get it done. They did a perfect job. We got home from this evacuation and their suitcase sat out there. Didn't touch it. And we told Betty, don't touch it. The boys need to empty that themselves. So they started emptying it. Max starts walking downstairs with bottles of wine. He's like, why is this in my suitcase? Oh, I'm like, forgot you had spare space in your suitcase and there were bottles of wine and also a sommelier saber. So there was a gigantic sword in their suitcase because Dan was gifted this when we were traveling. But the boys still did it. And there was part of me that's like, oh, I can just get it done for them so they can be kids. But they actually had fun doing it. It wasn't done well. Nope. I know what they did is they put most of their clean clothes in the laundry because that's the easiest way to unpack, but they still did it. And I think one of the best gifts, also the hardest gifts that you taught me in parenting is giving our children the autonomy to fail on their own terms as long as they are safe. And one of the best text messages I ever received from Noah's school, he goes to an outdoor school, was this. Because I asked him, hey, it's cold and it's raining outside and you plan to be outside at a park all day. Is this still a go? Mr. Aaron's reply was, it's our responsibility to keep your kids safe, not comfortable. Make sure they're prepared. We're still going. And I'm like, oh, that's a good one. Yep. So now I think if they're safe, then we've done our job. Because at this point now in their lives, they're very capable of doing it, mostly themselves. Although mama still likes to be involved. You know me. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Like even this morning, I was picking cactus out of Max's shoe and out of his tire on his bike because we live in a desert and he drove over a cactus and there was big things sticking out of his tire and his shoe. And I'm like, I know he can do this by himself, but I just want to do it for him. And it is tough as a mother because we just feel like that's innately what we do is we comfort our children. We comfort them. And then sometimes you just got to let go. Dan's like, I'm not doing that. Nope, Max, you do it yourself.
I don't. It's funny because like you see my content I put on Instagram, so you probably see the inspiration. But like, yeah, I just have this philosophy. We don't want to handicap our kids by doing everything for them.
That's true. It does handicap them.
Yeah. And I think it's important to allow them to is I think somebody said once, it's like allow your kids to do dangerous things in a safe way, right? Yeah. Like,
sounds like
riding
a
bike.
Cutters
Like last night we went to the pump track on mountain bikes and we were hitting jumps and like Noah totally was like, I thought for sure he was going to crash.
Fail.
But again, like, is he going to break his neck? No. Is he going to scratch his elbow? Probably if he crashed. So I had to let him be dangerous in a safe way. He's wearing a helmet. He's good, but he was definitely hitting the jumps at a capacity that was above his skill set. So luckily he got unscathed, but there's one of them, he overshot the landing and landed so hard that he scared himself and just put his bike down and sat on the ground. Yeah. I came around. I was like, yeah.
I got walkie-talkies today that are being delivered to our house because we live next to a park that has bears and coyotes and other stuff. Um, and they like to go mountain biking. And so I got them walkie-talkies. I actually don't see kids our age alone on the mountain bike trails out there ever. So we got walkie-talkies. Okay, we could talk forever. I love this. Any last piece of advice you want to give our listeners?
Yeah, I mean, the message I would love everybody to consider is I think, every person on earth is here to do two things. I think we're here to become the 10.0 version of ourselves. A lot of people call it our greatest selves, our heroic self. Another way to think about it is the person you needed most in your darkest days, right? Like the person that inside, if you're being honest with yourself, that you have the capability of becoming. That. So every day wake up and try to aim towards that. Even if you never achieve it, I think just the path and the journey to go towards that really unlocks our purpose. And then on the same vein of that message is, as you're doing that, share yourself, that process, your success principles and habits with the world. Like share your lessons learned with your kids, share your manifesto with your community, with your team. And I think if you wake up every day to try to be the best version of yourself, and share all that you're learning with other people, that's a rich life. That's a cool
I love this
life to live. So that's my message to everybody in the world. Honestly, I just, depending on different audiences, I might frame it differently.
Become the person you needed for yourself during your darkest days.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. Thank you, Dan. And congratulations for being the 200th person on the
Thank you for
show.
the honor.
It was my friend Allie that recommended this. I was like, oh, it's so brilliant. I wanted to do kind of like a co-interview. But I know that, you, a lot of people admire you. You inspire a lot of people. And there's also, you're worth celebrating on so many levels. Your book, in our partnership too, and the crap that you put up with me. I know how I can be. I'm actually perfect. He doesn't see it yet.
Well, I absolutely adore and love you. And I think you are one of the most talented, creative women out there. Hence why you have so many people that follow along. And I'm just proud of what you've built so far and can't wait to continue to see you just keep aiming for the stars.
Well, thank you. And what I love about you as a partner too is how much you push me beyond my comfort level, like next level, not even the same stratosphere comfort level. Um, because you see something in me that I have yet to see. And I know you see this too in a lot of people that you coach. And it's probably one thing that frustrates you the most in coaching is when you see the potential of somebody and they're stopping themselves 10 feet shy of that next level. And that hurts too. And I think that's a big reason why you get up every day and you become this content generating engine. And I get to sit here and watch it and hear it. And believe me, I even texted Ann today. I'm like, when does Dan get his office? Because he's really loud.
She told me, she's like, yeah, Renee says you're really loud. I was like, I know.
You were downstairs. I thought you were upstairs. You were in the basement or something talking, and our staircase spirals all the way up. So it just echoes. And I'm like, oh my God, who is he talking to? This is so loud. And I was like slamming the doors. I'm like, I want him to know how loud this house is. Bam. And I slammed the door and I'm like, oh fuck, that was pretty loud. No, but I appreciate you. I appreciate you and thank you for coming on the show, taking the time to come and chat. You're the best. Love you.
Love you, babes. All right. See you soon.